We want wildlife in our gardens, right? Two of my guiding principles are fostering biodiversity and restoring habitat in urban spaces. The goal is to have a flourishing ecosystem with a balanced predator-prey relationship, subsoil and above ground. But what happens when this becomes seemingly inconvenient to us? You see, raccoons have been harvesting sweet potatoes, they've been tromping on my newly planted seed trays, they've dug up some kale plants at least 3 times, and most recently they took a turn at pruning my citrus trees. This was not good. Well, context is vital to understanding, as each situation may be unique. So in this video, I want to touch on why I think this is happening, ways it may be avoided, and how raccoons are beneficial. I'm Scott from New Garden Road, always out here to inform, inspire, and elevate you. Encouraging biodiversity and restoring habitat is my mission, one garden at a time. So I've been gardening here in this backyard for 17 years and I've never seen damage from raccoons on this level. But much of this can be explained, I believe, by environmental factors such as our seasonal weather trends. It's been hot and extremely dry. The land is parched, wildlife is thirsty, and they have a family. I've been nurturing a fall vegetable garden, and it's a haven for bugs, birds, butterflies, and yes, even raccoons. And I shouldn't blame everything on them either, because I can come out here after dark and easily find a skunk or a possum in the garden too. So how are raccoons beneficial? I mentioned this at one of my recent presentations, and not everyone in the audience was sympathetic to them. Now, I understand they can do some serious damage when it comes to chickens and other areas of our habitat, but in my case, while this has been entirely inconvenient and I'm trying to grow some food here, they're just getting in the way of that, I still feel like I don't want to hate on them. I will cuss at them, but they're part of the system and we need that system. Once we start excluding one piece, then we've set off a chain reaction, and I think that's what is pivotal for us in understanding how we affect our environment. Raccoons are one of the OGs of the plant world, and by that I mean original gardeners. They will naturally plant seeds after eating fruits and berries. And they eat a variety of insects such as beetles and grubs and even small rodents, helping to keep those populations in check. And as scavengers, they naturally clean up and cycle nutrients for us. They help to aerate the soil as they forage, they're a food source to larger predators, and so in this way, they're an essential part of the soil food web. If you enjoy this content, consider joining my Patreon and supporting the work that I'm doing to raise awareness around ecological gardening through stories like these. Thank you. I do have some ideas on ways that we can mitigate this issue. Number one, take into consideration drought conditions. For me this time of year, what I started to do was make sure I water early in the morning. That way the soil and the plants have time to absorb that moisture. It's not going to be there overnight as a draw to these critters, as well as, not leaving any standing water out. I'm emptying my bird baths and any drip trays that I've got underneath containers. Some have said that maybe you should put water out for them intentionally in a location away from the garden. I think that could be a good idea. Most of my bird baths are in fair proximity to my garden and they're spread out because I want to provide water for wildlife. But I think if you avoid having it accessible to them overnight, then that makes them, have to go somewhere else for it. I also think that it could be a helpful idea to harvest on a regular basis. Raccoons and other varmints like this are opportunistic, so we want to take advantage of our harvest before they get a chance to. Now, I know that can be easier said than done in some cases. Sometimes the fruit just isn't ready to pick. That's why I've also started to incorporate cayenne pepper, and it does seem to have helped. They've stopped digging up the kale plants since I started dousing them with cayenne pepper. You know how much cayenne pepper I bought? It was like 5 pounds. Got a deal. Do what you got to do for the garden. Maybe I should start growing my own cayenne peppers. Another idea is to employ physical barriers. Keep those raccoons out altogether. For my seed trays, I'm considering elevating my pallet table. Now, they do climb trees, so I don't know this is foolproof. Maybe it needs a cage on top. Recently in one of my raised beds, I did a lot of direct seeding. So I planted and I watered, and I needed to keep that soil moist for a week or more while those seeds germinated. So what I did was I took a piece of fencing that I often use for trellising and I laid it on top of my raised bed. And this made a physical barrier, but I went a bit further and I incorporated some insect netting. Now this also helped to hold in moisture, which was really beneficial as the weather conditions have been so dry and even breezy, which is wicking away moisture from the soil. This combination seemed to work really well. There was just no way for them to get to it. So while they might not always be practical, physical barriers are a way to go. I also want to mention that you can be particular when you choose a soil amendment or a fertilizer, because when those come with poultry meal, some other type of meat meal, bone meal, that can be a real draw to these critters. They smell it, it's got a really strong odor for them, including dogs. You know, maybe you have a dog in the family that just loves this stuff, so every time you go to amend the soil around a plant or do some bed preparation, they get in there and dig it up because they love it. You can find some that don't contain those ingredients. The Sustain brand is one that I have used for many years, and this is comprised primarily of composted turkey litter and some feather meal. And for me, this doesn't seem to be appealing, at least to my dogs, and in general, wildlife has not been attracted to it. So I think that's a really important factor to consider. If you're adding fertilizer and amendments to your soil that has some of those meat products in there, you might be having some raccoons set up for dinner. You know, once upon a time when I was growing up on New Garden Road in Greensboro, North Carolina, we had 5 cats at one point. And when you've got 5 cats and they're indoor, outdoor cats, you feed them outside, sometimes you attract animals like raccoons. Well, this is what happened. We ended up having these raccoons come up and get some of that cat food at night, and sometimes there was a little bit of a close call with our cats and these raccoons. That was cause for concern, because if you love cats, you know they can be really important family members, and they're great companions. What we ended up doing was calling animal control. I know a lot of people go this route. Animal control responded, came out with a trap and some donuts. I found it really intriguing that they loaded up the trap with donuts, but I guess that makes sense. You know, raccoons will eat just about anything. Well, we caught a raccoon, but it wasn't the only one. You know, that's the thing. And where that raccoon ended up, I'm not sure. But the story goes a little bit further than that, because as a young one, I was influenced by this, and I thought it was kind of exciting. So, you know, this is the time before the internet, if you can imagine. We got information and ideas from printed books and magazines. And I had the one magazine in the back. It advertised for basically a raccoon trap. I can get my very own. So I saved up my money. I did a mail order raccoon trap, arrived, and you know, the rest is history. I think I got about 16 mug shots via a little mini Polaroid camera, and I would take pictures of these raccoons, and caught a few possums in there, a couple of neighborhood cats by accident. And did you know when you get a raccoon in a trap like that, they will growl at you like a bear? Possums, on the other hand, will only open their mouth and hiss at you a little bit. Quite terrifying looking. And if you get the cats in there, they're just mad as they can be. And who can blame them? We moved eventually from New Garden Road, and I kept it up. And you know, I did this in the name of my family cats. I thought I was, you know, avoiding some interaction, and I might have been, but in retrospect, it feels like something I wouldn't advocate for. You know, we would take these raccoons and go out in the country and just let them go. So it seemed like relatively harmless, but we took them away from their territory, their family. You know, there could have been some little critters that needed them. These are the types of things that I think about relative to ecology and our interaction with it, because we play a big role and we have a lot of responsibility. You know, I've got skunks running around this garden too, and as much as it, you know, gives me a little bit of, you know, fear that my dog might run into this skunk here a time or two, which has happened. We've had some close calls. I wouldn't dare think of, you know, trapping these animals and taking them away from their home, because they're a part of my garden. I know you might not be accepting of this idea, and that's okay, but I want to present this case to you because, you know, my neighbor started doing some trapping, and I'm assuming the skunks were being taken off. But the thing is, there's still skunks. You know, you're not going to get rid of them all, and what are they really doing? Are they really causing harm? I mean, I think there's things that we needed to do. We have to create exclusion and so they don't get into our structures and interfere with our pets. But I guess I just have a soft spot for wildlife, and part of gardening and my journey has brought me closer to that. Understanding these relationships, observing things over time, it just made me closer, and I feel like I don't want to interfere. I just don't want to. So I wanted to share those stories with you. They take me back to my childhood. Now check out more awesome gardening videos on my channel. Like this video and follow New Garden Road for weekly content. You can grow your own food. Keep it organic.